And how did you manage with the visa? Because now there is this Brexit situation, and I know that for British company, it's very expensive to get workers that come from abroad.
Yeah, it was kind of nightmare, but let's say the company helped me a lot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Creative Insider Podcast. In this episode, my guest is Italian architect and CG artist Vincenzo Massa. Vincenzo, besides being an architect, plays a lot of sports and runs a lot. So he is also the winner of our Sober October award last year. We set up the prize as the latest book of Björk Ingel's group, Formgiving, for the person who would burn the most calories throughout the month of October. And he was that guy. It took a while, but here he is on the Creative Insider Podcast. He has worked between Italy, Hungary, and he's now working in London at the office started by Richard Rogers. So the interesting thing of his story, beside all the sports and everything, is that he moved from Archviz back to architecture, which is an unusual situation. So follow throughout the episode to understand why he did this move and how he arrived to do this move. Before we start, I want to thank you for watching this episode. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you want to do it, just remember to press the subscribe button. If you want, press the bell. If you like notification. I personally don't use notification, so I wouldn't recommend it. And yeah, thank you very much and enjoy the conversation with Vincenzo Massa. Hello, Vincenzo. Welcome finally to the podcast. You are an Archviz artist, an architect now, a super fit guy because you won the Sober October last year. And I have to take all the faults of the situation because I haven't sent the book yet, but it's going to be on the way tomorrow. We have set up everything already with our courier. And,
don't worry.
I'm glad to have you here on to talk about Archviz, architecture, and how can you do these jobs and be so fit and work out so much. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Don't worry. I know we all have busy lives, so everything is fine. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. Honor more than a pleasure because I followed you since the podcast, since the first days. So I'm really happy and honored to be here. Thank you again.
No, but you have also a very interesting story, a part of listening to the podcast, and you have also earned your place here. And I have to say about the managing all the things, having a full-time job and doing everything that regards the podcast, it's starting to giving me a little bit of a burnout. And that's why I'm slowing down a little bit the podcast because otherwise I'll go crazy.
Yeah.
Too many things. Maybe I'm trying to find a way to find collaborators because I cannot do it alone all the time, everything. And we'll see how it's going to develop. But now I'm very curious to discover more about your background because you have a very particular story. So you studied architecture. You're also Italian. So
yes.
Why did you decide to go into architecture to study? Is someone of your family into that field, or what happened?
So basically, I mean, none of my relatives is an architect, but both from my mom and both from my dad, they have a various artistic background. So my grandparents, from one side, they were painters. Jewelry designers. From my dad's side, my grandfather was a yacht designer. So all the time when I was a kid, he was doing, the small model of the boat, yacht that he was producing, designing. So I fell in love since the day one, with the small scale model. And my other grandparents, they were used to create for Christmas I don't know the English word, but it's like the nativity with the small Jesus. So it was like a small city, to celebrate the Christmas, the Catholic Christmas. And since then, I was helping them when I was like 8, 10 years old, with creating these small houses, for this Christmas tradition. And with my other grandfather, I was helping him with the small scale boat model. And when he passed away, I was like inheriting all the boat model, big, small, and so since then I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do, like designing and producing, because I was so in love in modeling. So I could say that was like my, when the sparks begin. And afterwards, I kept this idea of becoming an architect, although, during high school, especially like in Italy, everyone was like, why are you planning this career? It's really tough. And especially in Italy, it's a bit complicated to, stand out. But, the more someone was telling me that something is hard to achieve, the more gave me, the strength to try to overcome all the difficulties and the challenges, let's say. So that's why I stick to it. And although, like in another way, I was starting from another, let's say, path, and then I went back to architecture. So it was a bit of a various background.
What was your other direction you were going?
I started like with the visualization mostly, then designing. So that was but it was just a coincidence more than an idea. It was like an opportunity, let's say. I started like working in the visualization field, although I was still working like on competition, personal projects, some small scale projects, interiors. And then, the more I move on, the more I wanted to have the same experience, like great experience in the visualization environment in another architecture office, because it was always my, you never know something until you try it. So I was very happy, like where I was working in the visualization, a lot of connection, a lot of friends. But I wanted to have this other opportunity to feel like, okay, I can do it. If I do it, maybe I know if I like it or not, if I want to go back. And I think one of the major, positive aspects of studying architecture or being an architect is the flexibility that gives you. And, also on the podcast, I've heard a lot of different stories of people coming all from the same background, like architecture, but doing so many different things, because I believe it gives you a very wide range of skills and also opportunities. So it's not like, okay, probably in a couple of years I will be doing something totally different. But yeah, for the moment, I'm happy where I am. So
yeah, one thing that happens a lot on the podcast is that I talk to many Italian people, and maybe people think that I do that because myself, I'm Italian. I have an Italian passport. I grew up in Italy, but also you, before connecting through the podcast, I never knew about you, and I didn't know 99% of the people that were on the podcast that were from Italy. And I was extremely surprised about how many super talented, skillful people from Italy are somewhere around the globe doing something special. And like, I wasn't the one anymore. But my story is a little bit different because my parents moved from Bulgaria to Italy. I grew up there. In exactly after enough time, I was really integrated in the local culture, into where I was living. I had to move abroad again because I didn't see any future for my personal career. So I'm curious. This you are Italian and you're from Naples, which is even a more like family region. You said yourself you had very great connections with your family, with your grandpas, with I guess also with the rest of the family, not only with your grandparents. And how was it for you personally, or a part of the career, to take the decision to find out, because I found it out, I didn't know it when I started, that there is no, what you're studying, 99% of the chances you're not going to have a great opportunity career-wise where you are, and to take this jump and move abroad. In your case was even in a country, Hungary, where you started doing visualization as far as I know, or where you went to do visualization, which is not as common as, for example, I'm in Germany where there are a lot of Italians. And Hungary is a country that we don't know so much about. So I'm curious, like also on a personal level, was it initially enthusiastic, or was it painful? Was it painful after a while? How was this for you? Because I don't know your experience. I know only my experience.
Let's say personally, like the changing point was, I think it was last semester of my 5 years master's degree, where all of a sudden there was the opportunity to have an Erasmus, which I never thought I wanted to do, because I was so well connected, like in Naples, because I was a football referee and so many activities. So I didn't want to pause those activities. And that's why I never considered before this Erasmus opportunity. And I think that was like the turning point where I've been, for a coincidence, I was supposed to go to Turkey. It was to 2016, 17. But at that moment, there were some terroristic attacks. So that was canceled. So they told me like, oh, there is just, as an English-speaking university, there is this university in Budapest, so in Hungary. So I went here, and that was like for me, the most struggling moment, because, like thinking of living 6 months or a year abroad was, like, oh, this is gonna happen. So I went there, but then, it was one of the best choices I could ever make. And so, of course, that changed my mindset, although I was always willing to have this kind of experience also after graduation. And then after that, it was for a pure coincidence. I graduated, I took the licensing exam in Italy, to be a licensed architect. And I was, collaborating with some small local studio, which, didn't give me that spark, because usually we were like always, the intern or the last one, or, the one that need to learn, which is true. But, sometimes you need some, how can I say, some help, but also, to believe in your skills, in yourself, especially on the job market. So I was, okay, I need to look somewhere else. I joined the Brick Academy, the visualization academy. I think the first one, I believe, since they founded this academy. And it was like another great experience with a lot of friends that, even though I didn't work afterwards there, but still nowadays, if we have the chance to meet in Budapest, we always greet each other, we talk, and we share our experience. And after I was applying for other jobs, and still for a coincidence, I ended up in Hungary. Although I wasn't employed as a artist, 3D artist, but I was more as a quality manager. So I was checking the images, the projects, and all the infos coming from the client. So it was like mainly creative. But they gave me, the opportunity to work on my projects, to still grow this artistic approach, even though, my main tasks were totally different. So that's why I stayed very, very with pleasure there for a long time. Like actually, it was like right before COVID and I stayed here for 3 years. And then while I was working there, I had the opportunity to join a postgraduate course at the University of Venice, for which I won a scholarship. It was quite challenging because the course was on the weekend, but I had to travel most of the time between Budapest and Venice, most of the time. But the professors there were quite flexible because it was still during COVID, so 2021. So some of the lessons were online, so I could stay in Hungary, and sometimes I was traveling. And thanks to that, I had this opportunity to join RSHP, Rochester Carbour Partnership in London. At the beginning, it was just for 3 months. And I was happy because, it was something that I always wanted to try, to work in a big office, on big projects with such talented people and great mentor. But then afterward, luckily, they were happy with me and they extended my contract. So that's where my career switched. Although, they have a visualization team as well, and everyone is like, why you are the first one who is switching back? Usually Italian architect especially goes from the architecture to the visualization. For me, it was the total opposite. So, and there I could meet so many talented Italian 3D artists, for example. It's quite, as you said, you don't know them, but now, as soon as you start to meet people, you see there are so many talented people especially with architecture background, that you feel like, okay, I don't know anyone. I didn't know anyone because it looks so good, and what they do is so astonishing that I feel like, okay, maybe I still need to meet so many people because I don't know anyone. I didn't know anyone. And yeah, this is shortly my background. So yeah.
But were you always so excited about the career opportunity abroad that, like, my question was more like if you miss home, because also we live, like, we work to live, but we also have a private life. And for me, for example, the longer I stay abroad, the more it gets very weird, because on one side I miss sometimes home, but I'm too different now to go back, because I'm a different person as after such a long time abroad, because you get used to something new. So I'm curious, for you, coming from a completely different environment, how did the pure living in Hungary, the local culture now in London, how this affected you and how it's changing you?
Yeah, I agree with you, because now I'm a totally different person. So I'm not sure I'd be able to go back where I was. Also like mentally, personally. But what I find hard for my side is to break the roots. So I always try to keep my roots in the south of Italy with my friends. And as long as I can, trying to make a difference there, make a contribution there are friends who stayed, bravely there, doing their own businesses. So if sometimes I had the opportunity to help them, to help some friends of a friend. So I'm happy to make a contribution, to give my personal small, big contribution to the some projects there, because and it's hard, as I said, to be abroad, because you miss your relatives, you miss your friends, because of course I made so many friends, but the real one, the true ones, are always, the one who stay there. So sometimes you miss a lot of events, because you can't travel all the time, especially if they go out all together for celebrating birthdays or other events. And sometimes, it feels like, okay, I'm doing so many sacrifices, like as people living abroad, because I think it's always hard to live abroad far from your relatives. But, you try, at the end, you try to find a balance. So, okay, I can't be there at the moment, at least. But, okay, if I can help somehow from distance, I'm really happy to do so. And although, I'm like you, sometimes when I'm there for like more than, a couple of weeks, I feel like, okay, I need to go back, to have my own space, because it's different, because we grew up and we are a different person than we were than I was before, during university, when I was living with my parents, with my sister. So, now you are more independent, you live on your own. But of course, I mean, from my side, I always miss my relatives. And as you said, probably it's because in the South, it's more family based. So your roots, and which I think is the strength that helped me to reach my small daily goals, or to let me be where I am now, because there were so many challenges. Everyone, I think, faced challenges in their own life, but it's not the amount of challenges that you overcome, but it's your approach to them that can help you to reach what you really want to.
And you mentioned before that while you were in Hungary during COVID, you were also doing this postgraduate class at the University of Venice, which sounds to me like a very crazy setup, because also traveling during COVID was very difficult. But what was that? And you said this was the event that allowed you to move now to London, back to the architecture field. What did you study in this postgraduate?
It was the first edition of tall building design. So it was related to very complex building design. So like skyscraper, hospital, stadium, with a lot of great lectures and professors. So it was very challenging experience, because as I mentioned, was like 2021, so still some limitation restrictions on traveling, and a lot of papers you have to carry every time I was traveling, and also mentally, physically was quite tiring, because working here and then traveling over the weekend and sometimes by bus, and it was challenging. So, but it was very, very good one, because, I said, okay, let's try. And after I also was able to win a scholarship, was, the choice to join it was even easier from still an economic point of view, but also I felt, okay, so maybe my portfolio, what I was doing was still good, even though I was, since 3 years I was working in a different field.
Yeah. And this scholarship in particular helped you also get the internship at the company RSHP, where you are now.
I mean, at the end of the postgraduate, we were all supposed to have an internship, like, 300 hours of internship. and there were other studios. So, but my idea, as you said, there were also Italian studios, but I said, okay, if I need to do it, I want to try still abroad, because I couldn't think of myself of going back. So I had this conversation, because they had an agreement. So, of course, they had to check your portfolios, your CV, and then they invited you for a interview. So I had this interview. It all went well. And so, I was supposed to be there just for 3 months, but afterwards, because I had to complete those hours for getting the diploma, the postgraduate, and they said, but let's extend it. We are happy. If you are happy, we can keep working together. And, it was a good thing.
And how did you manage with the visa? Because now there is this Brexit situation, and I know that for British company, it's very expensive to get workers that come from abroad.
Yeah, it was kind of nightmare, but let's say the company helped me a lot. I mean, because I didn't know exactly which one, because there are so many different visa, but then if you are a student, you need a different one. So it was a bit of a long process. And in the end, I mean, we managed somehow, because I think like for a student, it's different. You need a sponsorship. So the companies usually have other UK-based companies to get a sponsorship, that it's just, okay, this guy has this contract, so he's going to move here to work for this amount of time and so on. But then you need to, after you got this sponsorship, this certificate, you need to apply yourself on UK government website and go through all the many questions. Where have you been traveling the last 10 years? How many times have you already been in the UK? For some other visa, you also need to have a specific language certificate, which is not the average one that every one of us might have done in the past, but it's just specifically for UK. So I find it very funny, because I believe it's a way to just make more money, because it's the exact same test that you would do for any kind of English certification. But just because in the name it's written UK visa, you need to pay a different one, and find a specific center which can let you do this test, because it's not very widely spread in Italy or abroad. You need to find a specific center. So this part was a bit of a nightmare, and also the bureaucratic part was a bit of a long process still going on, because every time I need to send the HR the papers that I got the salary. But, I had the opportunity, so I feel myself lucky, because I thought it could never happen. And also being there, I feel for the companies a nightmare as well to deal with this kind of bureaucracy. And also they find it very hard to attract talents to UK. Okay, London, maybe it's a specific case, because it's so international, so everyone would be willing to. But I living there for like almost 1 year, I find it very, especially after COVID, so many people, especially so many expats are just trying to fight back to have a more balanced work life. And so they realized, I think during COVID especially, and afterwards, that something was going wrong there. And so that's It's not so smooth. It wasn't super smooth, the process, but it's doable, let's say.
Yeah, I've heard like there are crazy costs though that the companies have to carry to, I don't know,
True.
do your procedure. I was in London right after they announced they're gonna after the referendum when the Brexit was voted, and I was back. That was 2017, I think. And then I was back last year in October just for 24 hours to watch a comedy show. I went to Joe Rogan in London, and we were with Oliver Thomas, also regular guest on the podcast. And it was way less international than it was in 2017. It was way more British people around the city, but also the city wasn't that let's say curated anymore. It was dirtier. I felt it was different. I don't know if this is Brexit or just COVID and the economical crisis, but I think it was, to me personally, it felt very different, because the first time when we were around, I was longer there for a week, and we couldn't barely find anyone to ask directions that would have the British accent speaking English, And the last time I was, there were only British people around, and it was, to me, very surprising. And I know that a lot of people left, and I say this myself, like if I'm now before Brexit, maybe one opportunity for me as next move to Germany would have been to go to England or to the UK, because people speak English there, and they have a different spirit. I still very much like the British humor, the British culture. It's funny. But after the Brexit happens, and I would have to go through this hustle, and also right now, money-wise, it's not worth it anymore that much, because also the difference between euro and pound and the salaries in Europe and the UK is not so, in Germany, it's not so big. It's kind of like not worth it anymore. So it's like, I mean, it's a nice experience to have, and it's nothing to say against you, but it's like like it's to say something about like what is my personal feeling on the Brexit situation for myself. I don't know if that's better. Maybe also I heard that now more skilled workers come from the UK. Maybe this will be a push to have a better skilled work from there. Or maybe it won't be, because there won't be anyways enough people. So we only with time we'll be able to see how it goes.
Yeah, true.
I'm curious. You went from Archviz to architecture back, and I know one more person that worked with me that did that same thing, and he told me he did it because he wanted to do something more, beyond the superficial images. He wanted to participate into building something. That's why he moved. What was your reason? Was it the same, or was it something different? Why did you wanted to move to the architecture?
Kind of the same, because even if you like, of course, in this big scale project, sometimes you just work on a very specific side of it. So it's not as you design the whole master plan or the whole building. So also that part, or working on a very small side of a big project, was, something that I was always looking for. And that's why I also started studying architecture, because even if you, like manage to build a very small project, either it's I don't know, you design a furniture or other stuff, and you see it, realize it's one of the best feeling I've ever had. And also being part of a good team, it's like, probably that's because of my sport background, when like you work in a team and you reach a milestone of a project, or the client is happy, or you are doing, I don't know, one of the most sustainable projects, or something very in which you trust, in which you believe, you feel like, oh, I'm part of something big, or I belong. And that feeling, I think, was the things that I was looking for, because I never regret, the background and the experience there, because everything was amazing. And so probably I will be back. I don't know, because I'm open, but I wanted to have this kind of experience because the international environment is something personally that I really love, because you talk with so many different people with different backgrounds. And I think few days ago I was talking with a colleague, like an associate, so very older than me, and I was like, oh, if I can learn every day very small things, I'm happy, because actually, architect, it's something that you build over years, like your skills, your knowledge. So it's like craftsmanship. So you need to build every month, every day. So you every day learn something new, or even very small things like, okay, the corridor in this kind of project needs to be this wide, but you need, and he was like, yeah, you're right. That's true. So that sense of belonging, of, okay, we are a team, we work together, we work towards a certain goal, which is the client's happiness, or the goal of the project in specific cases. It's something very, very good and fulfilling to experience. So, yeah, I agree with the same feeling that your friends was sharing.
And I'm curious, how was for you when you started working, even if it was just an internship? You had completed your master degree in architecture, you were a licensed architect in Italy, you did the postgraduate class in Venice. Once you joined this completely different office that's world leader, or at least UK leader, because if guys, you go on the website to RSHP, you can see the kind of projects that they have done. Was it more like you were really new and you needed to learn a lot? Like it was, I always make this comparison. Once you do your driving license, you have the driving license, but as soon as you start driving alone, it's completely different than driving school. How was for you with architecture?
What surprised me positively was the openness of all the colleagues. And sometimes I think I was too cautious, in trying to do something. And they were like, okay, but don't worry. I mean, let's ask, even the very experienced one were like, okay, let's do this together, or, just showing me. And also, you are in a totally new environment. I was like, very different path, because, UK architecture system works totally different for, students after they graduated from the bachelor, or they got their master, they have part 1, part 2, and then they become, after another year, very licensed architect. So it's a very long process, which is more reasonable, I believe, than what we have, for example, in Italy. But probably it's just because the scale is a bit different in terms of numbers of architects. Anyway, so that was very surprising. So from day one, I didn't feel scared to ask also the stupid questions, like, okay, but how wide should it be? Because, every country you work in has a different rules. And so everything I've learned was totally new. And also after, I graduated at the end of 2017, I moved to Archviz 2018, 1 year later. So it was like 4 years, 3.5, where I only worked on personal project, personal competition, which is a different scale than the real projects that need to be built. So I felt like, okay, I need to be very, very humble, modest. So just put myself, my skill set in terms of softwares, and because every office also uses totally different softwares, but At the beginning it was okay. It's like I'm newly graduated, even though I'm like 5 years since I got my master. Yeah, surprisingly, they were all helpful and willing to help, open, and probably, I don't know, I was just biased because of my experience as a designer and architect in Italy, although I had a very limited experience and in very small sized studios. So, that's things that, okay, but, you are always a bit, not scared, but cautious before moving or doing something or ask something. But I'm totally the opposite. So I prefer to ask even the most stupid question, because it's better than doing something without knowing what is actually required or what is actually needed. So yeah, that's a bit scary, but not surprisingly good.
And you work also in Italy. Was it the environment between Italy and the UK in the work office completely different? Because, for example, I noticed when I came to Germany that the relationship you had with your professors in Italy was completely different than the one you had with your professors in Germany. I've never worked in Italy, but here you have this very flat hierarchy where, I don't know, nobody says I'm the boss and we do it this way. Everybody work as a team, as you said. Is this in Italy as well, or is it different? Or what is your experience? Or in Hungary too? I don't know.
Yeah, like at university where I could, have this double experience is exactly as you said. Like also at university, the professor looked like your friends, your mates. Like, don't worry, okay, let's do this, and okay, probably someone would say that it was because of the Erasmus. Erasmus is always something that they try to make it easier, but it wasn't, to be honest. So just the relationship with the professors, educators was great. In Italy, still, I didn't have a very long experience, but listening also to my colleagues, my friends, or someone who after this postgraduate went working in Italy, was more like this. Okay, let's do this. And sometimes I feel you need also to be very lucky because also in the team you join. Also within the same firm, there might be different teams where the leader is someone who is very open-minded, very helpful, very how can I say, very helpful, that is willing to listen. But personally, was, as you said, sometimes I felt like I was over-skilled, but I wasn't completely understood by the boss, by someone who was working there, but who was in let's say, a higher position than me, but they didn't know some basic things that I knew. And so either you fight that system, which is wouldn't lead, I thought at that time, but still I think, wouldn't lead anything good for, the category. Because if it's just one walnuts in the basket, it doesn't make much noise, as we said in Italy. But that's why it's a bit disappointing, because we have a very great history in Italy, and seeing this kind of listening to this kind of disappointing story within architecture is a bit sad. But yeah, the differences were massive in a positive way, because what I was thinking is exactly what is happening and what was happening when I moved to Hungary, and now that I moved to UK, work-wise.
And what were your initial tasks? Were you involved into more like construction documentation or more concept design? What were the new tools you had to learn? Because you mentioned that also that every office uses different softwares, different methods.
So I joined this. They immediately put me in a skyscraper project because as soon as they heard, oh, you study tall building design, so it's better to be in the team that's working on a skyscraper. So I joined from schematic design until the end, so detailed design of this skyscraper. So it was already, like the main design, the main shape of the building was already set. And there were like small fine tuning of the different offices floor, the lobbies and these kind of things. But what was great that it wasn't, those tedious tasks like, okay, the new arrived guy is gonna make the toilets or is gonna work only on that specific 2D drawings. They were like giving me the offer, the opportunity to, okay, this needs to be done, can you take on this challenge? Yeah, sure. And this is where, there were the main possibilities to learn how to set up drawings, how to deliver drawings, how this 100% scheme design, detail design, what is the level of detail you need to reach and what needs to be tackled. And it was very challenging because it was already defined building, like in terms of shape, and so it was more technical because I started in a design stage which has already some milestones until arriving to the very detailed like interiors, and which was very interesting. And software wise, mainly the softwares used were Revit, Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, Enscape. The new one that I learned there was MicroStation, which I never used, to be honest. It's the 2D software, which is for certain things very powerful. Different than AutoCAD and Rhino for concept. So for me, the new one was just mostly MicroStation, and Enscape, for example, I knew, but it's very, very user friendly. So even if you haven't used it for a while, it's very easy to understand. And
And MicroStation, I know it's quite the standard in England, in the UK, because there are a couple of offices here in Frankfurt that they were started by people who work at Norman Foster, and they use MicroStation. So I had some university mates that were using also MicroStation. And you did this specialized master in tall buildings design. I've now worked 7 years in the architecture field as an intern and then as an architect. And here in Frankfurt, Frankfurt is the city of the skyscraper in Germany.
I've been there.
It's a little we call it Manhattan because it's on the River Main. So it's a small copy of let's say New York in some way, because also the financial center. So working here in local offices, sometimes you have to design a skyscraper or something that it's taller and designed as a skyscraper. So I'm curious, what were these specific pressure points that you learn at this master degree or now in the office that regards specifically the skyscraper and the tall building design?
Yeah, the main one of the main aspects that probably as students coming from, I think like none of us have, we don't have like a technical exam, for example, or at least I didn't back at university about technical aspects of building a skyscraper. So this aspect was quite well explained. So all the technical aspect, that it's not only about architecture, it's about structure, how different type of structure can work to reach exactly certain type of shapes, and the MEP, so all the plants and how much space you need to, for air conditioning, for cooling, for winter time. And also another important aspect was how can be, a tall building sustainable. So all the sustainability aspects of tall buildings, and mostly the technological aspects of a tall building, skyscraper, and the complexity that a very big project, as also, for example, an hospital, a stadium might have, because sometimes as architects or creative designers, we tend to simplify certain, especially coming immediately after the university, we think like that, okay, it's always everything creative, but it's not. Like sometimes you need to stick to a brief, you need to fulfill certain requirements in terms of sustainability, of plans, of technical needs for the building to be built. So a lot of these aspects that I felt very lucky coming from the university, even though, because I think it's, as a skyscraper, it's an example of one of the most complex type of building. Of course, there are others, but I think the skyscraper, the tall buildings, are the ones that include all the various aspects of a building. So it was taken as an example on how to tackle the different aspects, because architecture is not only designing the shape of a building, but it's the sum of so many different aspects and so many different knowledges that, of course, we as an architect can never be able to know every single things. So you need to. That was the main take on that I had from this experience. Like, okay, be aware that there are so many aspects. So even if you are designing a core, you need to accommodate this amount. And speaking of the postgraduate, and that. Also, some other, there are also the second edition, the third. So a lot of students I could see, most of them, also my colleagues there, and some of the new ones are, architects right after university. So you are still unexperienced. So it feels always like university, but it's something very, very specific, very detailed, and that it's good because it gave me like the awareness of what can you find, and also the good things that a lot of the lectures and the lessons were held by leaders of big firms around the world. So they gave us like the direct the reality of what is like working on such complicated, complex buildings, and also how it is like to work in a very big offices, either in UK or somewhere else.
Yeah, totally. No, I think it's a very interesting knowledge to have an overview about the different aspects, as you said, of a tall building. like there is the structure, there are all these installations that you have to plan because it's tall. But I planned it only so far. Architecturally speaking, it's a little bit easier than other buildings, in my opinion, because you have to plan the core. And of course, if you have a crazy shape, the floor plan will change a little bit through the floors. But that's more or less once you've done the core and you've done the entrances in the bottom stories, you're good to go. I think it's as you said, it's a complex structure from the point of view of different aspects that has to be considered as statics and so on and so forth. And I'm curious because one of the main reasons why we got connected is because you also have this extremely sporty background and you're still keeping up with your physical activity. How is the work-life balance and I don't know, also financially, how is the situation for you now that you are working in this big company? Architecture is famous for crazy overtime because of crazy deadlines. Is the company very well organized, or is it still a little bit of a struggle? Yeah, so how is your work-life balance in general, and also financially, if this new setup it's better from the point of view of the salary in this situation, or Archviz was better, or for you it's more important to have tasks that are more rewarding for you now than the economical part?
So from the work-life balance, I must admit that here in UK, I feel they gave every employees very wide range of benefits in terms of sport activities, also company activities. So especially when from springtime, there are a lot of planned office activity like football, softball, netball. They gave you gym membership if you are willing to. So on this point of view, they really care about the work-life balance perspective from the perspective of the employees. So, and anytime if you might have any small problem, issue, you just go to speak with your leader or with the human resources, and they can really figure out any kind of possibility to help you out. Also, when I was struggling with the visa, for example, so on this side, I'm very happy. And regarding deadlines and working hours, we start like 9:30 UK, so it's not so early morning. And mostly, I mean, depends, because basically not many over hours. Sometimes on just if we have like a deadline and there is some problems on the way, so you might have like a couple of hours to stay more longer in the office. But other than that, I mean, it's something very different. It's not super. Or if you have if you can't stay longer there because you had some other things to do, or some appointments or whatever, it's very flexible. And so it's very well organized. And although I think it's like inside within every architect to feel like, okay, if I stay longer, it's, I don't know, I feel like, because also with a lot of English colleagues or international one, they always feel that they can't leave if someone else is still there. But sometimes, some of them is like, okay, no, but I mean, it's all right. Let's go home. You don't need to stay. They are like telling me to leave, even though I'm there, just supporting sometimes because I finish my task. Or if I'm staying there longer because it's my own problem, because I didn't finish what I was supposed to, I know it's because of me. And I mean, it's nothing, there is not much I can do to, it's just my fault. And keep going. And yeah, financially also it's quite okay. Of course, London is very expensive city, but on certain aspect is better than it was in Hungary, because during COVID, for example, the currency was really weak and was changing very quickly every time. So the salary was worth less in a couple of weeks, and 2 weeks early. Anyway, it was a bit complicated, and still also after the war, the inflation is very high, one of the highest in Europe. Although as a city, they are two totally different cities, and I feel like more coming from the south, where everything is a bit chill in terms of enjoying life. I feel the south closer to Hungary than London, because London is always crazy. Everyone is rushing. If you want to go somewhere, you need to queue, or anything you want to do. Sometimes I did something that someone was trying to pay me, like a favor or something. I was like, no, I did as a favor. And one of my flatmates was like, oh, welcome to UK. It's all about capitalism, that no one is doing anything for free. So I was a bit surprised on this side, that everything, if you want to dog sit the dog of a friend of yours, or something that I would do for free in Hungary or in Italy for a friend, they were like, oh, no, okay, how much is it? And I said, what do you mean? Oh, how much should I pay you? And I said, oh, look, no, I want to pay you because then, and this, my flatmate was explaining that it's because then they feel like we are equal. I don't owe you anything in the future. So they just want to, feel themselves free, which is a bit, strange feeling. But probably I put into account that it because of my cultural background, which is something different. And probably the Italian way of living is too much, too friendly, too lovely, too nice. Then sometimes, on the other hand, it's not always the same. But yeah, I feel like it's improved financially, and also here, I feel like in UK you can always freely speak about anything, also within the company, like if you have some problem, or if you, I don't know, it's not, money is not an issue as it is sometimes. I felt it was in Italy, for example, that if you speak about, even though I have 1 year experience, I feel I need this much to live. And it's not a big issue, because as long as you can share your problems, there is a way to find a solution. If you are not allowed to share, or you are afraid because your boss is a bit scary, or is not happy to talk about delicate topics, there is no way you can find a solution unless you quit or you find another way.
No, yeah, of course. And how is the kind of project you guys do? Is it very international, or is it mainly UK based? Because I've seen among the projects that you have built some of the iconic skyscrapers in London too. And also if the team, it's also very international, because yourself, you're not from the UK.
Yeah, funny enough, I think in the most English and Italian team, but because there is a guy who's been there 7 years, so he's in a high, and he's Italian actually. I was sitting next to him, we were speaking in English, and then he was like, actually I think he's from Rome, and so we were like really close in a sense that of cultural background. But yeah, the office itself is very international, because most of them, especially after Brexit, few of them, probably I am, one of the 2-3 guys who managed to get to the office from abroad after Brexit. Project-wise, very, very international. Asia, Middle East, UK, and it's very, very flexible in a sense that the opportunity now, the market, especially after the war, is moved a bit towards the Middle East and to the Asia, but still it's very, very open, so quite international, not specifically UK-based projects. There are many because UK is very, very much full with opportunities, also from a building perspective. But yeah, quite various.
And yourself, you've been then working also in the more international projects, not the UK.
Yeah. For the moment, I've only worked on international ones, so not on UK-based projects. Although it's not, it will be. I mean, hopefully in the future, there will be some other opportunities to work on UK-based projects. But it's always nice to work in different countries because you learn different rules and something also culturally, because you need to immerse yourself into another country's culture to see why you need this amount of space or two different rooms for a certain type of activities. And besides all the rules, the laws that are different in terms of requirements, like dimensions of a parking space, which I thought it was basically the same everywhere, but in specific places is wider because they have bigger car, and it was funny. It is funny to discover these kind of small things, and also culturally why they need different rooms for different activities, because they're not used to do certain things, or it is always interesting, and that's why you barely get bored, because every day there is something new that you took for granted, but then they say, oh, but I know it is, as you said, but there works differently, for example.
And how many people work at this office, more or less?
We have different offices, but the London one is the biggest, and it's like 150. But I think altogether it's 200, 220, because there are like one in France, in Paris, Sydney. Last year they opened one in New York as well. So it's quite. I think there are bigger, but yeah, it's 150, 160 in London, which is at the moment the biggest office, the main one, let's say.
I'm seeing online that your office it's inside of one of the skyscrapers from the office, right?
Yes, and it's for me was what was very surprising was not surprising but fulfilling, in a sense that you studied, for example, Richard Rogers on the books. We all know the Saint Pompidou with Renzo Piano and Madrid Airport, Heathrow, the Lloyds of London, and you just suddenly, from one day to another, you just went into one of the iconic building of London.
But that one is quite new, no? It's because I remember
2016, I think. Yeah, 2016 was open, so it's like very young compared to some other.
Yeah, so, I remember it was almost completed when the first time I went to London. I remember that building was almost or it was whether just completed or was about to be finished. It's in the heart of the city, It's right next to
because they have
the gherkin.
Yeah. I mean, those are the two buildings because they are next to each other. So I can see when usually, especially now that the weather is good, by bike, I leave the building. A lot of tourists taking pictures, selfie towards the gherkin the gherkin, the Foster ones. And these are the famous ones, especially in UK, because they gave a nickname like the gherkin for the Norman Foster one, and cheese grater for this one, the Leiden.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the shape.
It looks like a cheese. I didn't like when I saw it the first time. There is this, I think it's where the core of the building is. The structure looks like arrows that show towards the up. You have indications to go upstairs.
That's true. But that was the reason behind was because of the London as a very, that I figured out during this master, the postgraduate course, because there was an ex-chief of planning officer, because we had a trip there, and he was explaining why some of the building has this strange shape, and he was explaining it's because of the planning law of London, where all the building, especially the skyscraper, needs to leave the view for St. Paul's Cathedral from certain main road. So because of that, the cheese grater has this sloped, tapered facade, because from one of the main streets, if the building would be like straight, you wouldn't be able to see the St. Paul's Cathedral. And so that was the main reason behind the shape of the building, mostly. And yeah, it was also something new that I didn't know, and also the same for the gherkin and other building the skyscraper in London. That's from
you can always think about home once you look at the Shard, because it's made from Renzo Piano.
Yeah, it's also very, very close, and there is always it's nice as I said, for me it was very it is still a surprise every day to feel like you are part of something big, and they speak, because Renzo was a friend of course, Richard Rogers, so the influence, and it's always there. So you feel like, I am part of something that I've been studying for so many years at university, where you feel like a small point in the university, because especially coming from the South, where everyone was like against like this career because it's tough, it's challenging. So it was, as I said before, a fulfilling experience, and yeah, can't really complain about all of the struggles, let's say.
Yeah, no, it's a cool thing being ended up in this sort of say iconic practice. And in all of this, where do you have time to practice all these sports? And you said you've been a referee. What else did you play? Football too? What is your sports background?
So yeah, I was playing mostly football, but then I got injured when that moment. I was 13, 14. Where you either go in some teams or you just quit your career. So I got injured, and then I say, okay, it's fine. And I got over football. After a few years, someone was like, why don't you become a referee? You will be still into the football. Since then, 18, 19, I started to very late be a football referee. For 8 years, I believe, yes, I was escalating the rankings, going up. But then as soon as I moved abroad, it was one of the saddest things to do, like quitting it. So it was very, very challenging that side. So that's why I was always interested into the run, and I try to keep it all the time, also while working. Mostly I like to train in the early morning, because it gives me the energy to fight another day in the office in terms of creativity. And because I love the early morning where the city is quiet, and to run in the parks, London parks or Budapest parks, when I was here. Because if I can manage to train in the morning, I don't. I prefer to do it some other morning. I tried. I mean, I was supposed to join a half marathon in September, but then I received the accepted visa, so I had to immediately move to London, and so I'm trying to manage to join the next one in next September, or actually two, one in London and one in Hungary. So that's why I'm training this much, but also because I simply enjoy, and I find it very helpful for releasing the stress, or sometimes also the lack of creativity. Everyone has their own way to spark creativity, or when you feel stuck that you can move on certain things, or just because I simply enjoy it and gives me more power than annoying things from my side. But
Are you a Napoli fan?
I support my local team, Turris, which is because I'm from Torre del Greco, which is the third largest city of the region. So I'm happy as a expat if for this, but everyone is always, so you come from Naples, so you are a supporter. And since as soon as I was a referee, I was trying to be equal, so you can't really support anyone. But so if you asking what is my team, is Turris, which is on the third league. But of course, I'm happy as an Italian. I would be happy if all the teams would have won the international competition, because it was tough to lose against two English teams. I should say, being in London. It was a bit sad, but try to move on, and probably in the future, Italian sport in general will be successful as it was.
But you're lucky that we Italians won the European Championship in the heart of London against England. So I think the British people have suffered enough.
That's true. That's true. My Italian colleagues that were there at that time were telling me some of this story, that it was one of the most enjoyable events for them that evening.
I live in Germany. I still remind everybody about 2006, and then about 2012, I think, when Balotelli scored that crazy goal against Germany. So I think everywhere abroad you are, you always try to do this comparison. Well, Vincenzo, it was super nice, interesting talking to you and discovering more of your story. As you know, we complete always the interview with the one last question. If there is something that it's your passion, that part of running, you said that, or if it's that, the passion that recharges you when you feel a little bit of low energy with the creativity and with your inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Other than running, I love reading as well. So I tend to read, let's say, a book a month. But sometimes it's too much, or sometimes I manage to read two books, just especially motivational books or creative books where you can get inspiration from. And also drawing a lot. I'm also, and sometimes I keep doing some images for fun, visualization or, there are too many things that I like or to do, drawing, and sometimes you just need to find the right time and give priorities. But yeah, I try to stay open. So the basic is running, doing sports, let's say in general, every kind of sports, reading and drawing. And yes, that's it. And I love doing digital illustration and still images, even if I'm not working as a 3D artist, and personal projects as well. Sometimes, even though I'm not really advertising myself good, as probably I'm one of the fewest architects without Instagram, I could manage to get some small projects and with friends that were suggesting myself for some of their friends. So yes, that's, I can say the right word is to stay open to any kind of opportunity, and also because life is so unpredictable that everything can change in one day or in 1 month, as my experience taught me.
Is there some book that you have read lately that you would like to suggest?
Definitely. I mean, like from an inspirational point of view, I would suggest probably 3 books, like Creativity Inc., the story of Pixel, but and also The Power of Habits, which is more not a psychological book, but it makes you understand how we can change our bad habits to the good habits, and how habits works, if especially you want to create a better routine for yourself, which is one of the book I loved. And also, yes, Your Erroneous Zone. It's still more not psychological, but it's a well-being book where they explain sometimes how people wrongly think about certain aspect of themselves, how we are judgy with ourselves, and this being judgmental doesn't help to towards your goal. So yeah, these are one of the 3, I think, of my favorites. But then there are also some architecture books. The last one I read that I really liked was The Architecture of Happiness, Alain de Botton. Happy Cities, how happy cities, the well-designed cities, especially now that we should be going towards the more sustainable cities without cars, and how does a good planning works. These 5 books I would really recommend, although probably I'm forgetting some other books.
I think it's a good starting point. I've read some of those too. So I can...
You agree?
I agree with you.
Good.
Well, then, Vincenzo, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
And I promise you very soon the book is going to be landing in Naples or Torre del Greco.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. Keep up the good work, because I really love the podcast. And if you were wondering what I'm listening during my long run, most of the time is the Creative Insider podcast, because it's very, very helpful and very, very well done. And there's so much work, and congratulations. I mean, now I can say it.
And now you can, and now you can re-listen yourselves once.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.